TM Forum has a fantastic history over the last 25 years as a unique platform, actually, in the telecommunications industry plus space, as well as in other spaces, as a platform that provides a honest brokerage between parties that usually don't sit at the same table. Most of the time, competitors are not sitting at the table at the same table, and they have very clear restrictions what they can discuss if they do. And this goes for both sides, you know, the supplier side and the buy side. And basically, we have everything at the same table here, creating something which is, you know, doing greater good. And I think that's a fantastic achievement to have brought that to bear. And I think that's something, this platform, that is going to be much, much more valuable as we move into digital businesses in the future. So that's a fantastic asset. There's been a lot of de facto standards, if you will, that have been brought forward through these various collaborations, be it through what we call today catalyst programs, be it together that pieces of architecture or APIs have been put on the table or into the pot by the various interested groups, and then amalgamated by, you know, the best of the best technologists and architects to an overarching architecture that fits. Having been in many other industries than just the telco industry, this is something which is missing in many other industries. And that brings me to the second big asset, which I believe that with very little additional work, the frameworks, APIs, many of these architectures can be kind of standardized and neutralized in a way that they also adapt to other industries. Give you one example, customer experience management is in everybody's mouth. Everybody's thinking about that, everybody's talking about that. This is a discipline which has been you know, worked on and implemented in the BSS OSS stack for quite a while, and very much based on the architectures from the TM Forum. So I think that's one of the things that's taking it forward. Now, I believe that this is not enough to survive in the future. Many other groupings are trying to plot same or similar agendas. Digital transformation is also a big theme. Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, machine to machine, and all that comes with it. And that brings me to the three axes. I think we should develop the forum further in the future. Not giving up anything of what we've just discussed. I think that's a real big asset. Let me stick to the base first. In the virtualization of most of the digital ICT world, not only affecting the telco business, every business in this world, whether you go to Microsoft Azure or Amazon, or, I mean, nobody can evade this virtualization, the cloudification of things. And the same obviously applies to the telco industry itself, not only in their BSS type of data centers, but also in the OSS, in the core networks, which brings us to NFV and SDN and all these themes, which is obviously one of the major themes the forum and its membership are pushing forward. And I guess Nick will be able to elaborate on that a little bit later in much more detail than I can. So that's kind of a self-application of the medicine. Sure. One is preaching to other ones. But technology alone is not going to pull off the digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Digital transformation does not mean that we keep the business models and change the technology alone. There is an interdependency between the two, so that the business models are changing, they're migrating. Things that have been a solid business yesterday might not be no business at all tomorrow, or being delivered by other participants in the value chain than they have been delivered yesterday. One of the nicest examples to think of is all these travel portals like booking.com, etc. Nobody goes to a physical travel store anymore. So these people have been put out of business, and the gatekeeper is an electronic platform. Now, interestingly enough, on this electronic platform, there is no one single industry which is participating, like hotel industry or airline industry. There's a payment industry, is an entertainment industry, is all sorts of other industries which have to come together with services that are composed in various hierarchies, so that the end client, be it the business client or a user, can just from a mobile phone, from any type of electronic access this platform, make their bookings, and everything is going to be settled. Reservations are kept, people are not booking the same room. If you're booking a rental car, there's only one there, or another one is being provided. And things become part of the supply chain there. And I think that's something that's really happening when we are transforming businesses. And these decisions, how to transform a business or a company or an industry, is driven out of the executive rooms, the boardrooms of the participating industries and participating companies on the globe. So if we really want to shape how that's going to happen, the forum needs to move up. That's the first direction, into the boardrooms. Not just the engine room where our constituency are kind of the CTOs, the CIOs, the chief architects, and so on. We need to move into the boardroom with the same movement that, a CTO alone is not going to pull all the strings. The CIO alone is not going to pull all the strings. Mm-hmm. Is also there is a horizontalification, if you will, of the decision process. It's going to be the marketing, it's going to be the people from digital, the finance people, etc. Interestingly enough, looking back into the communications industry, none of these business models is working without any type of communication. So whether you're talking about smart energy, smart cities, travel, utilities, financial industries, you can pick any one of these services or amalgams of services. There is the element of communication in it. Yeah. And that puts back to the communications industry a huge opportunity, which kind of seemed to be lost in this discussion with the OTTs, who have occupied largely, squarely, and strongly created new business, but only in a part of this new digital world. And there was this discussion about dumb pipe and smart pipe. I think is a fantastic chance to really become what I call the digital dial tone. The CSPs are becoming the digital dial tone again, if they make it right, and that's something that again is at the core of the forum. So we've already covered kind of one directly, the up direction. The second one we already covered partially is what I call lateral. We have to move out of the kind of enlarged CSP or telecommunications field. which we are actually doing. We have utilities lining up to become members. We have financial institutions lining up to become members. But we need to be much, much stronger on those axes as well. And you'll see that already in Nice, we are again opening the aperture of our engagement with other industries and bringing them together based on this digital dial tone, and you have to be able to collaborate, which brings us back to the original strengths. Where is another platform where competitors can collaborate in these ways? And the third direction is, I'd call it East. The forum is strongly centered in Europe and in the US. Obviously out of its heritage, out of where the things were vibrant. But a lot of the, I would say, the fast growth, be it in numbers of consumers, be it in numbers of services, the adoption of new technologies, the adoption of new digital business models is coming from emerging markets, which is kind of a fancy and probably wrong thinking or wrong labeling these days. This is Asia, China, Southeast Asia, Africa, the Middle East. The adoption of many of these things is much stronger, and it's lots of innovation in complete business models, in healthcare systems, in financial systems, in mobile money, for instance, that doesn't really exist in Europe, but whole Africa and Asia and Latin America are working on that. So these are kind of the three axes we want to move without giving up all the others.
Yeah, I was going to ask. That's quite a bit. Yeah, I'm guessing that telecom will still be kind of a core focus for you guys, though. I mean, will kind of all these new directions kind of revolve around telecom, do you think, or how will telecom play in this? And the TM Forum's kind of plans more like longer term.
Well, as I said, it's our core today. It's probably 80+% of what we are doing. We're not going to give up any of that. We're going to enlarge that core by itself, with this digital dial tone, with the NFV, the cloudification, the virtualization of the base, what's going on. But at the same time, we have to add on top of that. So we have the core. The core itself is growing in absolute size and importance, and we attach to that the other areas like financial industries, like health industries, etc. Again, end-to-end, what we do in the base, like Zoom program, end-to-end orchestration and operation. This is a conditio sine qua non for instance, financial applications, or even more for health grades applications. We had a kind of a funny laugh last week when we talked about this. In what's the big difference? I mean, a dropped call is a nuisance, right? Yeah. But if you drop a patient or a customer because of a malfunctioning electronic delivery chain on medical surveillance, telemedicine, and so on, it's a complete different dimension.
Yeah.
Therefore, trust, security, thoroughness, reliability of these end-to-end connections must be at a different grade. Also, if you look at autonomous driving cars, I mean, I said, oops, I oversaw that other car, or oops, I oversaw that a young mother with a child in a trolley. Well, that's not an oops. And then you reset it like Super Mario and you've gone with a new game.
Yeah.
That can't happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like again, I mean, even just looking at the telecom space, I mean, you mentioned kind of the standards issues and how important standards are. I mean, even in the telecom space, it seems like standards are still such a tough racket there. I mean, even with the move towards virtualization, standards have become even more of an issue. But then to then expand it to all these other verticals and horizontals, I mean, you're looking at, trying to get these people to work together seems like an immense challenge. I mean, that's got to be perhaps daunting, but also perhaps maybe a positive for you guys, the opportunities involved.
Well, I think it's daunting, but you know, the challenge in the real essence, in the real positive essence of the word is there. And if we look at, for instance, our Catalyst program, which is kind of the real instantiation of this work, we used to have, you know, like 5 to 10 Catalyst programs running. This year in Nice, we are running 22 and had to decline an additional 10. Okay, so growth and demand is there. If you look at all the other groups, 5G, etc., they're working on very similar things without the platform which TM Forum has already established as a working platform, and that should not be underestimated. So I think that there is a real bright future there. Obviously, with the positive side of the challenge is the crunching side of the challenge to leverage all that, not to overextend ourselves. But we are a member organization, so the greater number of good, strong, healthy, financially vibrant, and keen to invest their technological and business savviness members we have, the better this can work.
Got it. Okay. Well, maybe for Nick, I guess, obviously, maybe what was the importance of bringing Peter on for this? I mean, obviously, it sounds like Peter's vision here is definitely pretty wide ranging. I mean, this is going to be a huge, maybe not a change or focus for TM Forum, but obviously, you guys are expanding your outlook on this. How important is it, I guess, Nick, to having kind of, I guess, Peter on board to kind of guide this new growth for you guys?
Well, I think it's extremely important, Dan, that we have somebody with Peter's experience here, both from the perspective of Peter's multi-industry experience and being able to give the perspective of how other industries think. It can be very easy, particularly, I think, for the telecommunications market that's typically been somewhat insular in how it thinks. It's typically bought from its own supply chain. It's typically innovated in its own supply chain. There's a lot to learn from other industries, but as Peter's described, what we're seeing is what's been traditionally a vertical industry in telecommunications now really becoming the platform for all of these other digital businesses. We're going to see the members of the forum playing very different roles in that, some that want to stick with the connectivity piece they've always done, and that will be a very viable business. Others expanding to the whole infrastructure across cloud, and others looking to go right up the stack that Peter's described into directly providing healthcare services. So the experience that Peter's bringing from those other industries is critical, and in taking us into other parts of the boardroom as well. This has been a long journey for the forum, and as Peter said, we're pretty excited. There's a lot to do, but there's a lot of opportunity as well.
Is there a concern, I guess, to make sure that you guys don't lose that kind of focus still on maybe your core constituents at this point? I mean, again, these are big changes you guys are looking to do, but it does still seem like Peter had said, 80% of your base is still kind of the telecom market. Is it important to kind of keep that focus for now, while not losing that kind of going forward?
I think the important thing to remember, Dan, is that market's changing as well. This isn't the forum serving a static industry and then trying to grow. The motivation for us to change, to be frank, as a member organization, is a changing industry. So the role of our members in the industry is changing as well. These companies are having to transform themselves into forming a very essential but different part of a much bigger ecosystem. So the industry forum for that group has also got to change with it. So if you like, we're helping our members to form a very legitimate piece of a bigger ecosystem. This isn't just about the forum finding a way to expand.
Yeah, okay. I'm guessing for Peter, I mean, obviously, again, the telecom space is somewhat traditional, and some might say stodgy at times. But it does seem like, again, this is going to be kind of helping them perhaps take that next step, and that's going to be a pretty big challenge, I guess, for you guys as well, just to make sure that the telecom guys come along for this journey.
Well, as Nick alluded, and you probably know, I've spent 30 years in the industry at various sides of the table. So from supplier to technologist to buyer to implementer. Small, huge companies, 400,000 employees, built my own business. So, from ICT to pharmaceutical, healthcare. Obviously, the core thing, I've done my 5 years as Group CIO of Deutsche Telekom, so I hope I understand 5 years. 5 years survived with my own consultancy company, especially in the telco field. Done financial services, insurance, and just give you one example where, for instance, the telecommunications companies are sitting on a huge gold mine, but they're not really monetizing it. User data, mobility profiles. That's a great thing, and the CSPs have gone a little way of monetizing that, trying to do it with navigation systems or cars, and maybe for marketing reasons, etc. But if you look at other industries, and we had an example of that lately. I mean, some other insurance companies, they're coming in and providing location-based and context-based insurance. If you're going, you're going down a ski slope, you can have that today, but you better know whether it's a good skier or a bad skier, is it a fast skier or a slow skier. And at the moment when you're buying the insurance per SMS click or mobile phone click, are you up and healthy, or are you down and you've broken your leg already? So there's a lot of wealth in that and value in that data, which you can monetize, but you can't monetize yourself, because the telcos are not going to sell insurance. They're going to sell the data for other industries selling insurance or financial services around it. And we can go on. I mean, these are not dreams. These are clear needs from other industries. And what's already happening also, I mean, Google's trying to do that in the UK already. So there are massive amounts of such services where the telcos, the operators, they're sitting on data that's hugely valuable. And if you're just looking inside, say, ooh, how do I monetize it? If you look around it, then you see the value. I mean, if you look at most of the incumbents telcos, they're running military grade services. Okay, well, health grade is not very far from military grade.
Yeah, it's good.
So you can monetize that, but if you don't have a health angle or telemedicine angle on these, if you don't get these companies into that ecosystem, you can't monetize.
Sure. Well, I mean, it seems like there has been some kind of steps by some of the operators in getting into some of these markets. I mean, obviously, some of the bigger telecom guys obviously have got the bigger workforces to be able to kind of go after some of these health markets or things like that too. So it does seem like it is kind of progressing a bit. I mean, do you think that there's some sort of hurdle still in the way for this to really progress farther, or do you think that it's just a matter of getting these guys to continue to support those initiatives to kind of keep them moving in that direction?
I think there are three things that need to happen. First of all, one needs to recognize that there is a new business out there that didn't exist before. Okay. So that's the transformational piece in the digital transformation. It's not just digitizing the existing business, it's transforming your business. Independent living for elderly people, relatively simple apps. Somebody's falling over, the doctor is being called. I mean, that has a huge macroeconomical impact, right? So that's one piece. The second piece is that you need to move on your own business, and there are new profit pools you can access to. As new business emerge, there are new profit pools associated with that, and especially if you look, ARPUs are going down, etc. There are huge pressures on many industries. I think some of them might collapse as companies. Some partial or parts of usual value chains of businesses will collapse or transform themselves. One of the great examples is reservation systems in airlines. Sabre was the most valuable piece in American Airlines, and people really understood that the whole flying business was only there for, you know, making the reservation system and then provide that as a service to others, and they could make the prices to other airlines. Well, that's gone. It's migrated onto the, you know, the booking.coms of this world, who are actually calling the prices. They are saying, okay, now let's make a loyalty thing. Let's make an action. The plane's not full. These are the hotel prices. And by the way, if you are not with us and paying, you know, 25% of your proceeds, you won't exist in the face of the world. So there's huge shifts in business, the way business is done, and new profit pools coming up. So they're not shaving off like 1% or 2% of your hotel room. They're shaving off massive amounts of money. Mm-hmm. So that's great news as well. So there are big shifts out there.
Yeah.
As Nick said, I mean, we like to be part of that what I would call the innovation forefront, which has been kind of the home turf of the forum all along. It's fun to be there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know I'm heading to the show in Nice here in a couple of months. I'm sure. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a much bigger show than last year, so I guess I should bring another extra pair of walking shoes. But well, hey, Nick, I guess maybe one final question before we wrap up too. I mean, obviously, it does seem like, you know, at least in the telecom world, virtualization has become a big part of telecom over the past 12, 18 months. I know you guys have been at the forefront of that as well. I guess, how do you view that move towards virtualization continuing, and how will, you know, how does Team4m continue, I guess, to still play in the evolution of kind of that adoption of virtualization and of the SDN type of platforms for both mobile and fixed telecom, the fixed telecom world?
Thanks, Dan. Well, as you say, we've been there really from the start of what's been the biggest wave of virtualization in telecom over the last 12, 18 months, which has been virtualization of the network. And that started for a lot of telcos looking at how they could really reduce the cost of running their network. When we look at things like energy consumption costs and other aspects of running access networks, that's a very sensible amount of saving that can be made there. But the opportunity that we've really seen goes a long way beyond that. It goes into the kind of agility that virtualization gives. So imagine, if you will, some of the services that Peter has talked about, some of the different types of services that people want to actually receive now, whether it's in healthcare or other markets. We're talking about high dependency services where you want to be able to control the network on the fly, determine the quality of service, determine the bandwidth capabilities at a moment in time. Much like in a very short space of time, companies have got used to when they're using cloud services from companies like Amazon. They used to just be able to dial up the amount of processing power they need. The network hasn't been built that way to date. And what we're seeing is the opportunity for a lot of these service innovations comes from virtualizing the network. But it also comes from what we've seen in changing the way that the telecom operator can monetize the services they're creating. They've been used to a pretty predictable pattern of monetization. You charge by the minute or by the megabyte. And different business models are starting to creep in now. That has massive ramifications on the business support systems that run telco operations and the way in which they actually operate. So virtualization for us goes beyond just a new technology wave or a new way of saving some money. It's actually going to be the key to unlocking this ecosystem. And what we're doing in the forum is to look at end-to-end how you manage that ecosystem, how you manage the monetization of those services, and really how you stitch all of that together so you can really open your borders as a telco operator and start to form some pretty interesting partnerships. So it's certainly going to be one of the biggest transformations we've seen of the industry, just because of